All right, let's talk about the New Orleans Saints. This is a Saints team that's been in the news a lot this offseason. They made a lot of big time moves, have been linked to a bunch of other moves, and there's been a lot of news that has come out over the past couple days. But when you link some of these stories together and you kind of see a clear trend of what the Saints are trying to do here, and it obviously would be a very massive move. We'll get to that in just 1 second. But first, I'm Nick, that is Andrew, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, for anyone following the Saints or the NFL over the past week or so, there's been a lot of news to come out that I think surprised a good chunk of people. Let's go through this in sort of chronological order, and then we can explain what the Saints are going to do here. So, this first story came out a few days ago, kind of surprised a lot of people. This is an article from Yahoo Sports talking about the Saints becoming a favorite to draft a quarterback in the first round, a certain quarterback. Again, this is from Yahoo Sports. BetMGM opened the market this week on the team to draft Shadir Sanders, and the New Orleans Saints have the best odds at plus 220. The Saints draft at number 9 overall and have Derek Carr under contract as their probable starting quarterback. We'll get to that in a second, but it seems likely they'll be moving on from him in 2026. Okay, so this odds came out, this report came out, and it kind of surprised a lot of people. The Saints had been maybe linked to a quarterback, but a lot of people were like, listen, I don't think that Shadir Sanders will be there at 9, and the Saints have other needs. Maybe they're going to get a quarterback. They do have Spencer Rattler. What is going on in New Orleans? And then the following day, this report broke, according to Ian Rappaport here. And we've got the tweet, if you don't mind throwing it up on the screen. Again, this is from @RapSheet on X. The Saints suddenly have a major quarterback question. Starter Derek Carr is now dealing with a shoulder injury that threatens his availability for the season, sources say. Carr is weighing options, including the possibility of surgery. All right, let's take all of this and the timing of it because it really matters. So first and foremost, let's break into this Derek Carr news about now dealing with the shoulder injury. This is not new, right? He's had this shoulder injury this entire time, and the Saints have obviously known about it, right? The only reason Ian Rappaport would leak this story or would come from just one of two sources, excuse me, it would come from Derek Carr's agent, which why would Derek Carr's agent release the fact that his client has a severe shoulder injury? It would make his client go down in value if he wanted to for negotiating for a trade or anything like that. Or it comes from sources inside the Saints organization, i.e., the Saints leaked this story to Rappaport to the media. Now, why would they do that? Let's go back to the story about the odds makers, where suddenly Shadir Sanders, his likely destination, best on the smart money, the big money in Vegas, the odds makers, is now the New Orleans Saints. I think the Saints here are sending a message to the rest of the top 10 and frankly the entire the NFL. Listen, guys, we want to make a deal to get Shadir Sanders. We want to trade up and get him if we have to. We are not playing a smokescreen game. We're not trying to play cute here. We're not trying to, oh, do we want a quarterback or do we not want a quarterback? We're trying to, you know that I know that you know that I know. None of that stuff that goes around during the draft. They're saying, listen, we are not messing around. We want a quarterback this offseason. We're going to get one in the draft, and we are willing to trade up to get our guy. So this is a message to the Patriots, the Raiders, the Jaguars, the Jets, all of these guys. Listen, the Panthers, listen, we are willing to hear offers for you to trade back, for us to trade up to get Shadir Sanders. This is a clear, just loud siren message directly from the Saints to the entire NFL. There's a reason that it came from Ian Rappaport, a guy who, like most great insiders, has two sources, agents and the team. Agent ain't saying this, like I said. This is coming from the team. The Saints are sending a clear message. We're drafting Shadir Sanders, and we're willing to make a big deal to get him. Now, look, you can argue whether that's a good strategy or not, or would that be a good move or not, and we'll do that. But first, Saints fans, want to hear from you guys in the comment section below. What do you think about the Saints' approach here? And do you want the Saints to draft Shadir Sanders or potentially trade up to get Shadir Sanders? I know there's going to be a lot of commentary on this, whether he's worth the trade up or even if he's worth picking there at number 9. But really curious what you guys have to say. Give us your thoughts on what the Saints should do here and what they're trying to do here. And if you like it, love it, or hate it, or just really are confused, give us all your thoughts on the situation. It's a wild one. Want to hear from you guys in the comment section below. But Mize, over to you now. What do you think of this latest massive move the Saints are doing here for the quarterback position?
Well, I think first and foremost, it's important to note their message is being heard because now, if you look at DraftKings, the latest from DraftKings, they're actually minus 130 as the favorites to draft Shadur Sanders. So, from the time that article was released, which I believe was a few days ago in the chronological timeline, to the time that the story of Derek Carr's shoulder is released, and now their odds are shooting up that they are, they're truly letting everyone know, hey, we want to go draft Shador Sanders. So I think that their message is getting heard. And I think it's really important that it is, because what I get from this is, and I think it's a good move for this aspect specifically, because Kellen Moore came to this team with the idea of, hey, I need to have a good offensive performance. He needed to come out of the gates as the head coach of the Saints and do a really good job offensively. It help his, credibility as head coach, help a lot of things. For him to be hamstrung in the very first year of his job as the head coach for the Saints, with, let's say, I don't know if he was planning on Derek Carr being available or not, but Derek Carr now not being available, having to deal with if he really liked Spencer Rattler that much, if he liked Jake Hayner as much as he did, being stuck with that situation as a first year head coach in a situation where you're supposed to be the offensive guy kind of sucks. So I think this is a really interesting way of them going, okay, well, we believe in our coach. We want to get him the guys that he wants. So here's the spotlight. Here's the bat signal. We need to trade up, or we need to do something to go out and get a quarterback. That quarterback, undoubtedly, if you listen to the odds makers, which usually they're pretty good on this stuff, seems to be Shador Sanders is the guy that they like. So I think this is a good move for Kellen Moore, because if he can start off with a young quarterback just early on and just mold him, grow him, I think this team is going to be a whole lot more successful than if for some reason they drag their feet in this situation and they come out and they try to make Spencer Rattler work, which maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. They try to make Jake Hayner work, which maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. It's going to be bad for everybody, because I think Kellen Moore getting his guy, kind of molding him, growing him in year one already, they can grow together, will be a much better gamble, because nobody knows if any of these quarterbacks in the draft are going to work either. But I think having him pick his person that he likes will be way better for the Saints than it would just sticking him with, all right, these are our leftovers from the last regime, the last administration. You deal with these guys. They're going to make everybody feel better, and this team will be a lot better because of it.
Yeah, I think to go back to your comment about whether the Saints knew this or Kellen Moore knew this, we don't know for certain. I'm willing to bet this was known the entire time, because severe shoulder injuries like this, especially for a guy like Derek Carr, who's a professional, love him or hate him, he's a pro's pro, right? He's not going out there, I don't know, skateboarding on the weekends and, falling off his shoulder or jumping off, doing crazy stunts or something stupid, right? The reality is this is something that is left over from the season where he obviously missed times. He had the hand injury, and I think he had the oblique injury too. He's had a lot of injuries over the course of his career. This to me is just a cumulative wear and tear thing that was kind of basically been under wraps this entire time. The Saints held out as long as they could before releasing it. They wanted to wait till right before the draft, or as long as they possibly could. Now the cat's out of the bag. The odds makers kind of revealed it first, and the Saints are like, look, what I'm guessing has happened is right. The Saints are probably trying to make some deals, so they were inferring, and they weren't getting any feedback from the other teams, because, like, oh, you don't really need a quarterback. You've got Rattler and Derek Carr. You're just lying with us. You're just playing us. And they're like, all right, enough of this, right? We're gonna leak that Derek Carr that we know as the Saints, we've known for weeks and months, that Derek Carr is in serious injury peril and he's well on the wrong side of 30. We need another quarterback. We want another quarterback. So enough messing around. We want to let everyone know we're willing to make a deal. We're gonna make a deal. And I think that was a huge move by the Saints. And you can argue again whether it was a smart move or a dumb move, but the impact has been made. And you brought up the shift in odds. If you look at implied probability, which is look at the odds, the plus, I think it was what, plus 220 to minus 130 was the shift. Basically, what that shift was from a probabilistic standpoint was the Saints were the biggest favorite to get Shedeur Sanders before at 31%. They said he had a 31% chance if you look at the odds, right? That's, 70% chance of not getting Shedeur Sanders. Now they have a 57% probability of drafting Shedeur Sanders. That is a huge leap, right? They went from a 7 in chance to not drafting Sanders to being the heavy odds-on favorite to draft Sanders, right? These kind of shifts, they mean a whole lot, right? This is not something to discard. We saw a few years ago when the Jacksonville Jaguars surprised everybody with their number one overall pick. They turned away from Aiden Hutchinson and they drafted Walker at the time. We saw huge probability shifts to that end. A lot of people are like, what does this mean? Usually, when you see shifts like this, it means deals are going to happen. And that's what the Saints have been trying to signal. Now, if you look at the long term approach to the strategy, I think it makes sense because even though they've restructured Derek Carr's deal to open up cap space and actually have a decent amount of cap space right now, they can actually release Derek Carr in 2026 and they will free up cap space. They'll free up 10 million bucks. Again, this is in 2026 next offseason. Now look, they'll have some dead cap hits. That's undeniable, but they will actually continue to be in a stronger cap position. So if let's say they draft Sanders this year, right? They've got I think 27 million bucks currently in cap space. In 2026, they add 10 million more when they get rid of Derek Carr. Suddenly you've got a young quarterback, you've got a decent core around him with some really good players, a lot of good young linemen, some good veterans, of course, a lot of good receivers. You look at Rashid Shaheed, you look at Olave, and now you got 35 million bucks in cap space to play with. I mean, that's a good situation for the Saints, right? In terms of how you build and succeed long term in the National Football League, especially if Kellen Moore was the right hire. So I know a lot of people are going to be very, very critical of this, and I think rightly so. They could have done this a lot better. Honestly, it's a bad hand they were dealt, or they kind of dealt it to themselves with the Derek Carr contract situation. But the reality is, if you look at the moves they've made over the past couple days, they are big moves, they're big signals, and I think in the end, in the long term, it will work out extremely well for the New Orleans Saints.